Hello everyone. Today we are going to be talking about TBWA, an advertising agency with its headquarters located in New York. In the 1990s, TBWA started its rapid global expansion and thus has many companies worldwide, and the one in Singapore is one of its many branches. The employees in TBWA are mostly made up of Singaporeans, followed by Australians, who were brought in as managers and directors to manage the growth of the Singaporean branch. These cultural differences can be broadly categorized into three main areas. Firstly, the different perceptions of work-life balance, how the Australians value the concept of work-life balance, while the Singaporeans emphasize work-life integration. Secondly, the different working styles, dealing with different perceptions of hierarchy, flexibility, and criticism. Thirdly, the different solidarity building styles, especially pertaining to the use of humor as a solidarity building style. First, let's look at the different perceptions of work-life balance. For the Australians, they take the concept of work-life balance very seriously. They take their weekends and after-work time very seriously, avoiding talking about work-related matters and not entertaining work-related calls or emails after work. Singaporeans, on the other hand, seem to always be working, even on weekends, because they feel like this will make them look more hardworking. This causes some problems, especially during the company's dedicated chill times such as beer o'clock. Beer o'clock happens every Friday from 4 p.m. and is the company's way of rewarding their employees for a hard week's work. While the Australians take it for what it is, chilling and relaxing from around 4 p.m., Singaporean employees, on the other hand, only start streaming in to the pantry around 5 p.m. And what's interesting is how they take the beers back to their tables instead of enjoying it with their fellow colleagues in the pantry and continue working with the beers at their tables. The same thing happens for the overseas bonding trips. What always ends up happening is a source of tension arising between the Australians and the Singaporeans, because while the Australians just really want to hang out and have fun with their colleagues, talking to them to find out more about them, the Singaporeans, on the other hand, always end up steering the conversations back towards work-related issues, which just really puts the Australians off. For the Singaporeans, though, they feel that talking about work even during relaxing times will show their superiors their diligence, which might get them a higher chance of promotion. Work-life differences aside, both parties also differ in terms of their working styles. The Australians value a flat hierarchical working style, which means that they would rather treat everyone equally. They feel that this would facilitate a better exchange of ideas because people might feel less inhibited. On the other hand, the Singaporeans are still more tied towards a hierarchical structuring of society, where you should treat your superiors with respect. And such a difference can result in misunderstandings, especially with regards to criticism. In critiquing their colleagues' ideas, the Australians tend to be more direct and straightforward, because to them, only if an idea can withstand criticism is it then a good idea. Singaporeans, on the other hand, tend to be more conservative, because they feel that it's disrespectful to critique their superiors. Both parties also handle tasks differently. The Australians exhibit a more flexible working style. So, for example, in deadlines, the Australians tend to set approximate rather than definite deadlines because they feel that they would rather the end product be the best that it can be, rather than simply rushing out an idea because of a set deadline. Singaporeans, on the other hand, see the ability to adhere to deadlines as a marker of their aptitude and ability and are rather uncomfortable with indefinite deadlines. Lastly, the two parties also differ in their solidarity building styles. The Australians tend to make jokes about the people they want to befriend because they feel that it should be understood that these jokes are not meant to be taken seriously. However, the Singaporeans don't really understand this rapport style and instead take the jokes personally and get offended. To the Singaporeans, building rapport with a person should rely on paying compliments to the person or making positive remarks about them.
Next, we'll move on to the analysis of the case at hand. The intercultural tensions were actually a culmination of a combination of factors. The individuals involved in our case study stemmed from two different cultures, the Australian culture and the Singaporean culture. So firstly, we recognize that the Australians hailed from a low context culture, where individuals tend to engage in more direct forms of communication. Contrastingly, the Singaporean employees hailed from a high context culture, where communication was indirect and infused with meaning. Australians were also known to be individualistic in nature, while Singaporeans were known to be collectivistic. Hence, the difference in values therefore strained intercultural relationships in the workplace. Next, the issue of work-life balance has become a problem as well. Australians stressed on the importance of sustaining a work-life balance. They felt that breaks and after-work hours were vital for rest and relaxation, and often left on time, even before their work was done, which may incur the ire of Singaporean employees who reckon that such acts exhibited irresponsibility as they have grown up with the ideal of meritocracy, which caused them to prioritize work over other activities, resulting in an unequal work-life balance. Power and status differences involved are also important. Australians' egalitarian culture presumed that it was acceptable to be friends with colleagues of lower positions. However, Singaporeans felt that it was inappropriate to blur the boundaries between work and friendship due to the high power distance involved. Next, we'll be moving on to the specific communication dynamics that are found in the relationship. The Australians were found to use divergence often when communicating with Singaporeans, while the latter frequently use convergence when engaging in communication with the Australians. Several cultural factors have also contributed to the issue. Firstly, cultural scripts shaped behavioral expectations in the workplace. Secondly, the act of violating one's expectations. More often than not, such actions result in negative violation valences, which may subsequently intensify feelings of hostility and dislike in the workplace. Third, chronemics played a significant role in the clash of workplace behavioral expectations, as Australians who were polychronic time-oriented conflicted with Singaporeans who were monochronic time-oriented. Being from an individualistic culture, Australians focused more on negative and own phase, while Singaporeans emphasized on positive and mutual phase, and this difference in phase orientation may incite further conflict. Lastly, the prickling feeling that most Singaporeans feel, the effective motion that the boss is always watching, gives them additional stress, which causes them to be unable to bridge the communication barriers with the Australians.
The reason why overseas bonding trips is a failure in bonding Australians and Singaporeans is again because of their differing culture. Both parties become more segregated instead of bonding over such events. Hence, we decided to come up with a few strategies to counter this issue. The first strategy will be TBWA's orientation program. The main aim of this program is to enable new TBWA employees to be adapted into the new corporate culture more easily. Firstly, TBWA can set July to September as the interview selection period to select potential candidates. These selected candidates will then undergo training classes from October to November. TBWA's program will be held in December. Team-based games are played competitively between all departments, forcing everyone to overcome differences and work together to accomplish a goal. The most bonded department decided by the organizers will be awarded attractive prizes such as incentive bonus and corporate retreats.
The second strategy is called Beer O'Clock. As mentioned by the first speaker, this strategy is to allow colleagues to wind down during working hours and get to know more about one another in an informal and relaxed environment. This will work for the Westerners due to their take on work-life balance as mentioned before. However, Asians tend to integrate work and life together, adopting the work-life integration lifestyle. This means it is difficult for them to separate these two parts of their lives. Hence, conducting such an event at the workplace during working hours would backfire as it would be difficult for Asians to not talk about work. So instead of conducting it at the workplace, the event can be held at local bars along Clarke or Rap Street. By situating the bonding sessions at bars, will create a more relaxing and appropriate ambience for leisure. Furthermore, instead of the bonding session being only accompanied with alcohol, it can also be held at different eateries around Singapore. This allows the Westerners to see a different aspect of the Singaporean culture and prompt the Asians to open themselves to their Western co-workers. Just like what Henry Norman mentioned in Bread for the Journey, the table is one of the most intimate places in our lives. It is there that we give ourselves to one another.